Tonight I'm taking you deep into a place most people only see from a safe distance. A forgotten forest campground in the United States, the kind of spot that looks peaceful in daylight and turns wrong the second the sun drops. This is a first-person horror story, told exactly the way it happened to me. No heroes. No backup. No signal. Just fog, firelight, and something in the trees that learns faces. If you get uneasy when the woods go quiet, if you hate the feeling of being watched, or if you have ever stared into darkness and felt like it stared back, you might want to stop here. Turn off the lights, put on headphones, and stay close to the fire. The road into the national forest looked like a vein cut into the mountains, blacktop glistening under a wet sky. I had been driving since before dawn, chasing the kind of quiet you cannot buy in a city. My phone had dropped to 1 bar an hour back, and the last gas station clerk had warned me the way people warn you about storms, like he had seen one take a roof. I told myself it was just a camp trip, a reset. 3 nights in the woods with my camera gear, a cooler, and a head full of noise that needed somewhere else to echo. The pines thickened. Fog stitched itself between trunks. The forest swallowed the shoulder and pressed close enough that my headlights felt rude, like I was shining them into someone's bedroom. At mile marker numbers I did not remember, the GPS gave up. The screen turned into a flat blue certainty that I was no longer anywhere. I took the next gravel turnoff because it looked like a road that still believed in maps. The tires cracked over stones. Branches arched overhead, wet needles dripping onto the windshield. The air smelled like iron and sap. After 10 minutes, the gravel opened into a small clearing that had the sad geometry of a forgotten campground. A splintered sign leaned sideways near the entrance. No fees. No posted rules. No other vehicles. Just a few picnic tables rotting in place and a fire ring with stones that looked stacked by hands that had done it 100 times. My engine clicked as it cooled. Silence expanded immediately, thick as insulation. Not the gentle silence of peace. This was the silence of something holding its breath. I got out and stood there, letting the cold soak into my jacket. The trees were tall enough to make the sky feel lower. The clouds did not move. Somewhere far back, water ran over rocks, steady and indifferent. I started unloading. Tent first. The familiar routine calmed me, like repeating a prayer. I chose a spot close to the fire ring but not too close, on ground that seemed level. The earth was soft with pine needles. My boots sank and came up smelling like old rain. While I worked, I kept catching glimpses of pale shapes in the fog between the trees. I would look, and it would be nothing. Just mist, just a trunk, just my own nervous system doing what it does when it loses cell service and comfort. By late afternoon, the tent was up, the cooler tucked into the shade, my bag inside. I set up my small camera on a tripod aimed toward the clearing, thinking I might get a time-lapse of the fog rolling through at dusk. Content. My channel thrived on atmosphere. I told myself that was all I was here for. The sun dipped without ceremony. The forest did not brighten or darken in a smooth gradient. It simply shifted, like someone turning down a dimmer until the world became a place of silhouettes and implied depth. The fog thickened in response, pooling low and then rising, as if the ground itself exhaled. I built a fire. The first crackle of flame felt like an intrusion, but I welcomed it anyway. The orange light carved the clearing into a circle of safety. Beyond that circle, everything belonged to the trees. I ate from a foil packet and listened to the hiss of the fire, the distant water, and the occasional soft creak of wood in the cold. Every now and then, something moved in the underbrush. Small, quick, a squirrel or a rabbit. Then it happened the first time. I looked up from my food and saw a face. Not a whole body. Not an animal. Just a face, pale and floating at the edge of the firelight between 2 trunks. It was too still to belong to anything living. It was angled as if peering around the tree, curious. The shape suggested a forehead and cheekbones and a mouth that did not decide whether it was smiling. My throat tightened. The rational part of me tried to label it as fog and shadow. A trick of contrast. An old pale knot in the bark. I blinked once and it was gone. I stood up fast enough that my chair toppled. The fire popped and threw a spark. I took a step toward the trees, then stopped. The darkness beyond the firelight was thick, and the fog made the distance feel wrong. It was like looking into a hallway that kept extending the longer you stared. I grabbed my headlamp and swept it left to right. The beam cut white lines through mist. Trunks. Ferns. Wet branches. Nothing that resembled a face. I told myself to calm down. I was tired. The drive had been long. The woods at night do things to perception. I righted my chair and sat again, forcing my shoulders to drop. I kept my headlamp on my forehead, its weight a reassurance. I tried to laugh at myself. It came out thin. The fire burned lower, and I fed it more wood. The flames rose and filled the clearing with restless light. Shadows danced. I watched those shadows too carefully, seeing patterns where there should not be any. I made myself focus on ordinary sounds. The water. The wind. The small movements of nocturnal animals. A new sound slipped into the mix, soft at first. A whispering like many tongues talking at once, too far away to understand. Not words. More like the suggestion of speech carried by wind across a field, except there was no field, only trees and fog. I stood again. The whispering stopped instantly, like a radio turned off. My heart beat in the hard way it does when it wants to be heard. I took a slow step toward the edge of the clearing. Pine needles muted my footfalls. I angled my head, listening. The forest held still, as if waiting to see what I would do next. Then the whispering started again, behind me. I spun toward the campsite. The fire was still there, bright. My tent stood like a small dark tooth against the fog. And at the far side of the clearing, just past the picnic table, another face hovered in the mist. This one was closer, maybe 20 feet away. It looked like a human face carved out of pale wood, but the features were too smooth, too undecided. The eyes were the worst part. Not holes. Not pupils. Just slightly darker ovals that suggested the idea of looking. It leaned forward, slowly, like it was emerging from the fog. I did the dumb thing. I yelled. My voice sounded wrong in the clearing, too loud and too human. The face did not flinch. The whispering around me rose, a soft excited sound, as if my outburst pleased it. I rushed toward the face, headlamp beam stabbing ahead, and as soon as the light hit it fully, it dissolved. Not like something running away. Like fog being scattered by a hand. My breath came out in clouds. I stood where it had been, staring into nothing. That was when I realized the fog in that spot had been moving against the wind. I backed away, returning to the fire. I sat, then stood, then sat again. I told myself I would go into the tent, zip it up, and sleep. But the idea of being sealed into nylon while something watched from outside made my stomach twist. I decided to stay by the fire until I felt normal again. I checked my camera. The little screen showed the clearing in grainy low light. The fire was a bright smear. The trees were ghost pillars. I rewound through the last 10 minutes of footage, watching my own movements. Me eating. Me standing. Me sweeping the headlamp. Me yelling. And there, on the edge of the frame, a pale oval appeared. It was not fog. It held its shape even as mist moved around it. It drifted, slow and deliberate, behind a tree, then peered out again. The camera captured it better than my eyes did. I watched it over and over, my fingers numb on the buttons. Every time it appeared, my skin prickled anew. The footage showed at least 3 faces, entering the clearing from different points, as if circling. And in one segment, right after I yelled, the camera caught something else. Not a face. A long, thin shape, like an arm made from smoke, reaching toward the fire ring. The fingers were too many, or maybe they were just motion blur, but the gesture was unmistakable. It wanted the fire. My throat went dry. I turned the camera off. I did not want to see more. I did not want proof that would make it harder to pretend. The whispering returned, closer now. It seemed to come from all directions at once, slipping between tree trunks and brushing the edges of my hearing. My headlamp flickered once. I stared into the darkness beyond the firelight, and the darkness stared back with patience. The faces began to appear again, one by one, at the line where the firelight ended. They did not move much. They simply held position, watching. Their presence made the clearing feel smaller, like the forest was stepping inward. I had the sudden, undeniable impression that the campsite was not empty at all, that it had been full the entire time, and my arrival had only made the occupants curious. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and clicked the car fob. The headlights flashed in response, blasting the fog with white light. For a second, the faces were fully visible. There were more than I thought. Dozens. All at different heights, some low near the ground, some high among branches. Some small like children. Some stretched too long. Their features varied subtly, like different attempts at the same sculpture. And then, in the flood of light, they all turned slightly toward the car as if offended by the brightness. The fob light blink ended. The clearing returned to firelight and fog. The faces remained, but now they were closer. I felt the first real crack in my confidence. The kind of fear that makes you aware of your own body as a fragile thing filled with warm fluids and breakable bones. I told myself I was leaving. I stepped toward the car. The whispering rose into something almost like laughter, still wordless but undeniably pleased. The faces drifted in response, gliding with me along the perimeter of the clearing, keeping their distance but matching my movement. I reached the driver door and yanked it open. The interior light came on. Every face in the clearing snapped toward me at once, and the whispering stopped so abruptly it left a ringing emptiness. I slid into the seat, slammed the door, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine did not turn over. It clicked weakly, like the battery had died in the last hour. I tried again. Another click. Nothing. My breath fogged the windshield. I stared through the glass at the fire, at the tent, at the pale ovals hovering between the trees. They began to glide forward, slow and steady. My hands fumbled for my phone. No service. The screen lit my face in a cold glow. A soft tap sounded on the driver's side window. I froze. Another tap. Gentle. Patient. I turned my head, inch by inch, and looked at the glass. A face pressed against it from the outside, flattening slightly like wet clay. It filled the window, pale and feature-soft. The eyes were darker smudges now, close enough that I could see texture in them, like fingerprints on smoke. Its mouth shaped into something that might have been a smile. Then the glass began to fog from the outside, not from my breath but from something colder than the night air. Frost webbed outward in delicate branches, creeping toward the edges of the window. The face remained pressed there, as if feeding on the warmth inside the car. My mind scrambled for options. Run to the tent. Stay in the car. Keep the fire going. Scream. Pray. Laugh at the absurdity. The face's mouth moved, slowly forming shapes, as if it was trying to speak without knowing how. My headlamp, still on my forehead, flickered again. And in that flicker, the face on the window changed. For a fraction of a second, it became my face. Same nose. Same tired eyes. Same slight scar on my chin from a childhood fall. Then the light stabilized, and it was the pale thing again. I jerked back in the seat so hard my shoulder hit the door. My pulse hammered in my ears. The tap came again, this time on the windshield. Then another on the passenger window. Then another, behind me, on the rear window. Surrounded, gently, politely, as if they were knocking on a neighbor's door. The whispering returned, but now it sounded like a chorus breathing in unison, preparing to speak through a single mouth. The face on my window drew back slightly, and I saw the fog behind it churn like water in a drain. Something bigger waited in that fog. Something the faces belonged to. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. I stared at the weak glow of my dashboard. I tried the ignition once more with a desperate hope. Click. Nothing. Outside, the faces drifted closer to the car, until pale ovals floated inches from every pane of glass, watching me from all sides like moons caught in orbit. And then, from the dark beyond the firelight, a shape unfolded between the trees. It did not step forward so much as assemble itself, as if the fog and shadows decided to become a body. Long limbs, wrong angles, too tall, too thin. Where its head should have been, there was a cluster of faces, layered and shifting, like masks sliding over each other. All of them looking at me. The whispering stopped. The thing leaned forward, and the car's interior light went out. When the interior light died, the darkness inside the car did not feel natural. It felt poured in. My headlamp clicked on automatically from muscle memory, and for a second I was grateful for any control I could still pretend to have. The beam cut across the steering wheel and the dash, then out through the windshield, carving a pale tunnel into fog. The faces outside recoiled from the direct light, not in fear, but in irritation, like insects disturbed. They drifted back an inch, then settled again, still close enough that I could see the firelight trembling across their smooth features. The tall shape beyond the fire ring did not retreat. It leaned, and the fog around it tightened like fabric in a fist. I forced myself to breathe slowly through my nose. Panic was a lever, and something out there wanted to pull it until I snapped. The whispering returned, but it was different now. Less like many mouths and more like one mind trying to imitate language. The sound slid along the glass, vibrating through the car's frame. I looked down at my hands and realized I was squeezing the steering wheel so hard my fingers had gone white. I made myself release it. The ache in my palms brought a small, anchoring reality. My brain tried to build a plan from scraps. Battery dead. No service. No neighbors. No ranger station that I knew of. I had driven off a main forest road, deeper than I intended. I might be 10 miles from help or 40. In the fog, the world could be a few feet. The tent sat 10 yards away, a dark lump behind the fire. I had a knife in my pack, a hatchet, bear spray. Things that mattered to animals and to men. I doubted they mattered to faces made of fog. The tall thing shifted. Not walking. More like a ripple passing through a curtain. It moved closer without crossing distance properly. The cluster of faces at its top rolled and rearranged, as if searching for the right expression. One face surfaced more clearly than the rest, and I felt my stomach fall. It looked like my mother. Not as she was now. As she was when I was 8. Smooth skin. Young eyes. The same small mole near her left cheekbone. The face held a quiet disappointment that stabbed me with a reflexive guilt so sharp I almost gasped. Then it changed. My father. My ex. A co-worker I barely knew. A man who used to sleep outside my old apartment building and ask for spare change. Faces that carried memories, each one dragging a hook through my mind. I realized what it was doing. It was not trying to scare me with monsters. It was trying to pull me apart with familiarity. The face on the driver window shifted again, smoothing into something closer to my own. It pressed forward, and frost webbed farther across the glass, creeping toward the edges like veins. I needed to move. Sitting still was letting it set the terms. I fumbled for the car's emergency kit, found the little flashlight, and turned it on. A second beam joined my headlamp. I did not know if light hurt them, but it was the only weapon I could imagine. I opened the glove compartment, found a road flare. The red cylinder felt like salvation. I yanked it free and checked the instructions with shaking hands. No. I told myself, no stalling, no reading, just do it. I cracked the flare cap and struck it. A harsh red flame roared to life, spitting sparks. The car filled with bitter chemical smoke. Outside, the faces reacted instantly. They jerked back, not drifting this time but snapping away like startled birds. The face on my window peeled off the glass, leaving a smear of frost that began to melt. The tall thing paused, as if reassessing. I held the flare up near the windshield, bathing the fog in red light. The clearing outside turned into a nightmare stage. Trees like black spears. Fog like blood-tinted breath. The campfire's orange looked weak against the flare's violent color. For the first time since the faces appeared, I felt something like advantage. I grabbed the door handle. My hand hovered there. The thought of stepping out into that fog made my legs threaten to fold. But the faces had backed off. The tall thing had stopped moving. This was my window. I shoved the door open, flare held out like a torch, headlamp beam jittering with my movements. Cold slammed into me. Fog crawled around my boots. The whispering hissed low, angry now. I stepped out, turned, and slammed the door behind me. The flare crackled and spit sparks into the mist. The faces hovered at a distance, no longer inches from the glass but still surrounding the clearing's edge. They watched the flare the way predators watch fire. The tall thing stayed beyond the fire ring, half in and half out of fog, its many faces rolling across its head like a tide. The face that resembled my mother sank back beneath others. I took a step toward the fire ring. Another. I did not look away from the tall thing. I refused to let it swap faces and tug my attention. The whispering rose again, and I understood without words that it was communicating to the faces. Coordinating. A face drifted low along the ground, sliding through fog like a stingray. It approached from my left, trying to get behind me. Another moved on my right. They were testing the boundary of the red flame. I swung the flare toward the nearest face. It withdrew, smooth and quick, as if burned by proximity. Good. I thought. Good. I reached the fire ring and kicked a log inward, feeding the flame. The fire flared brighter. I grabbed another dry piece of wood from the pile and tossed it in. I was building a perimeter of light. My mind latched onto a simple idea. Fire and light held them back. If that was true, then my survival came down to keeping the fire alive until morning. Morning. The word felt fragile. I backed toward my tent, keeping the flare between me and the faces. The tent's zipper seemed impossibly loud as I yanked it open. I crawled inside, dragging my pack toward me with one hand while keeping the flare outside the opening with the other, a stupid, awkward dance of survival. Inside, the nylon walls glowed faintly red from the flare's light. My breath sounded huge. I dug into my pack and found the hatchet, the knife, the bear spray. I lined them up like talismans. Then I realized I was doing it for comfort, not function. The flare's flame shortened, sputtering. Time was running out. I crawled back out and held the flare over the fire ring, as if asking it to donate its heat. The campfire responded, brightening. Sparks leapt. The faces watched from the tree line, restless. One drifted closer, testing. I snapped the flare toward it. It retreated again. The tall thing moved. It did not step forward. Instead, the fog between it and me thickened, and a ripple traveled through the mist. The ripple reached the fire ring and the flames dipped, as if a cold breath passed over them. The fire did not go out, but it weakened, turning sullen and low. No. I thought. No, no, no. I threw more wood in. The fire resisted, then caught, brightening again. The faces hissed in the whispering way, displeased. The tall thing leaned closer, and the fog ripple came again, stronger. The flames dipped harder this time. The edges of the fire ring smoked, struggling. It was trying to smother the fire without approaching the heat. Smart. Patient. Like it had done this before. I needed more fuel. Bigger fuel. Something that would burn hot and long. My eyes snapped to the picnic table. Old wood, dry inside despite the damp. I ran toward it, flare in hand, headlamp bouncing. The faces shifted in response, drifting to cut me off, but they hesitated as I swung the flare in arcs. I reached the table, slammed the hatchet into a plank, and wrenched. The wood screamed as it split. The sound felt like breaking a bone. The whispering surged, angry now, and faces rushed forward in a wave. For a second, they forgot caution. I thrust the flare at them, and the front line recoiled, but the ones behind kept coming, pressing the first ones closer like a crowd. The air turned cold enough to sting my eyes. Fog poured across the ground, flowing toward the fire ring like a tide. The tall thing leaned, and its cluster of faces rearranged into something like a grin. I hacked another plank free and sprinted back toward the fire ring, dragging the wood. The faces followed, closer than before, their smooth features sliding in the red flare light. One face darted in fast, too fast, and brushed my shoulder. The contact felt like plunging into ice water. Not wet, not solid. Just a sudden absence of heat, as if my skin forgot what warmth was. My arm went numb instantly. The hatchet slipped from my fingers and thudded into the pine needles. I stumbled, flare sputtering wildly, and the whispering erupted into that wordless laughter again, thrilled. I reached the fire ring and threw the plank onto the flames. It caught, burning bright. Heat washed over my face. My numb arm tingled painfully as sensation returned. The faces retreated a step, annoyed by the renewed heat. I snatched up the hatchet with my good hand and stood over the fire ring like a caveman guarding a miracle. Flare in one hand, hatchet in the other, headlamp beam trembling. The tall thing paused, and I realized it was not rushing because it did not need to. It could wait until I got tired. Until I made one mistake. The flare's flame shrank again, nearing its end. Red light dimmed, leaving the campfire as the primary glow. The faces drifted closer immediately as the chemical brightness faded. I made a decision that felt insane and inevitable. I grabbed my camera tripod and yanked the camera free. The strap caught on a knob, and I cursed, ripping it loose. If I was going to die out here, I wanted it recorded. Not for views. For proof that I had not imagined my last hours. I set the camera on the ground, aimed at the fire ring, and hit record. The tiny red light blinked. A fragile witness. The tall thing leaned again. The fog surged. The fire dipped, fought, dipped again. The plank I had thrown on hissed and smoked, struggling. I shoved more wood in, frantic now. The fire responded, but weaker each time, as if the cold was winning. A face drifted closer than all the others, hovering just beyond the fire ring stones, as if trying to measure the heat. Its features smoothed, then sharpened. It became my face again, but wrong. The eyes too wide. The smile too patient. It leaned toward the fire and inhaled. The flames bent toward it. My mind went blank with horror. The fire was not just heat. It was my boundary. My only line. I swung the hatchet through the air at the face. The blade passed through nothing, but the motion disrupted it, scattering the fog shape. The fire straightened, momentarily free. The tall thing responded. All at once, the faces around the clearing lifted, rising into the air, climbing above the firelight like balloons. They formed a loose ring overhead, pale ovals against black sky. And then they began to descend. Not toward me. Toward the fire. They dropped like snow, silently, into the flames. Each time a face entered the fire, the flames shuddered and dimmed, as if the fire was being fed something that made it sick. The wood crackled. The heat faltered. Smoke thickened, turning gray and heavy. I understood with sudden clarity that they were not afraid of the fire anymore. They were sacrificing themselves to kill it. I threw myself forward, swinging the flare like a club, batting at the descending faces. The flare sputtered its last breath, red light collapsing into darkness. The faces kept falling. The fire shrank. The clearing darkened. And in that growing darkness, the tall thing stepped forward for the first time, closing the distance like a decision finally made. The last flare spark died in my hand. The campfire went low enough that shadows reclaimed the ground. And in the dimness, I saw faces in places fog should not have been. On the tent fabric. On the picnic table. On the trunks of trees, as if the bark itself had softened into skin. The forest was filling with them. The tall thing raised one long arm, and the hand at its end unfolded like a spider, too many fingers spreading wide. It reached toward me, and every face in the clearing turned into mine. Seeing my face everywhere broke something inside me. Not in a poetic way. In the simple neurological way where the brain throws its hands up and says this cannot be processed, so it rewrites reality to survive. For a heartbeat, I felt detached, like I was watching myself from above. A man in a clearing. A small fire dying. A forest full of stolen faces. Then the tall thing's hand moved closer, and instinct slammed me back into my body. I ran. Not toward the car. Not toward the tent. I ran straight into the trees, because the clearing had become a stage and I was done playing the role of prey in the spotlight. The fog swallowed me immediately. The headlamp beam turned into a narrow cone that showed only the nearest trunks and a curtain of white beyond. The ground dipped and rose. Roots grabbed at my boots. Branches slapped my shoulders. Behind me, the whispering surged like a crowd rising to its feet. I heard something glide through the fog, faster than my footsteps. Not running, not crashing through brush. Sliding. Quiet. Faces. I did not look back. I kept my eyes on the headlamp cone and forced my legs to keep moving even as panic tried to steal coordination. The forest at night is never silent when you are scared. Every sound becomes a message. Every snap is pursuit. Every rustle is a hand reaching. I stumbled over a fallen log and nearly went down. My palms hit wet moss. Cold sank into my skin. I pushed up, gasping. The whispering was closer. I stood and ran again, but the trees began to look wrong. Not in a mystical way. In a human way. I passed the same forked pine twice. I recognized a boulder shaped like a crouching animal, slick with lichen, and I knew I had seen it minutes earlier. I was running in circles. The fog thickened, and the headlamp beam reflected back at me, making the world feel smaller and closer. I slowed, breathing hard, trying to orient. That was when I saw the first face in the bark. It was not floating this time. It was embedded, like the tree had grown around it. Pale skin stretched over wood grain. A mouth half-formed, eyes closed as if asleep. I backed away, and another trunk showed the same thing. Another face. Another. All with eyes shut, as if waiting for a cue. The whispering shifted in tone. Less excited. More concentrated. I turned slowly, scanning with the headlamp. The fog ahead rippled, and a face opened its eyes in the tree bark, staring directly at me. Then another opened. Then another. All around, trees waking up. I bolted again, but the ground dropped unexpectedly, and I slid down a short slope into a shallow ravine choked with ferns. I landed hard on my side. Pain flared in my ribs. My headlamp beam skittered across the ravine wall, and I froze. The ravine was lined with faces. Hundreds of them, stacked like scales, pressed into earth and roots, their pale features emerging from mud and stone. Some were my face. Some were strangers. Some were animal faces, half-formed, wrong. All of them stared at me with those smudged eyes. I scrambled backward, hands slipping in wet soil. My breath came in ragged bursts. The whispering poured down into the ravine like water, filling the space. Above me, at the rim, the tall shape appeared through fog. It did not climb down. It simply leaned over the edge, looking at me like a person peering into a well. Its head of faces rearranged, and one face surfaced clearly, holding expression longer than the others. It was my own, again but older. Deep lines. Hollow cheeks. Eyes that had seen too much. It smiled. The whispering stopped, and in the sudden quiet I heard my own breathing and the distant creak and something else. A low hum beneath the ground, like electricity running through roots. The faces in the ravine began to move. Not all at once. One mouth opened slightly. Then another. Then dozens. They did not speak words. They exhaled. Cold breath rolled upward, thickening the fog until the headlamp beam turned into a white wall. I was blind. Something brushed my ankle. I kicked reflexively and felt nothing solid. Just that same ice-water absence of warmth. Numbness crawled up my calf like a living thing. I slapped my hand against my leg, trying to force sensation. My skin felt distant. I needed light. Fire. Anything. I fumbled in my pocket for the lighter I used for camp. My fingers were clumsy from cold and fear. I flicked it. A tiny flame appeared, fragile and brave. The fog around my hand recoiled slightly, as if the small heat mattered. The numbness stopped crawling. The tall thing above watched, unmoving. I held the lighter closer to my leg. Heat seeped in. Sensation returned in painful pins and needles. The faces in the ravine hissed softly, displeased. I looked around desperately for an escape route. The ravine walls were steep but not impossible. Roots and rocks could be handholds. But the faces embedded in the walls made my skin crawl. I chose a spot where there were fewer, where the earth looked more stable. I began to climb, using one hand to grip roots and the other to keep the lighter lit, shielding it from fog and wind. Halfway up, a face in the wall opened its mouth wider, and the soil around it softened, turning to mud. My fingers slipped. I swung, caught a root, and dangled for a second, heart slamming. The root held. I pulled myself up, muscles burning. The lighter's flame flickered but stayed alive. I crested the rim and rolled onto flatter ground, gasping. I did not look at the tall thing immediately. I focused on getting my feet under me. Then I looked. It stood a few yards away now, closer than ever. In the dim headlamp glow, it seemed more solid, less fog. Its limbs were long like dead branches. Its torso was a column of shadow. The cluster of faces where its head should have been rolled continuously, but one remained forward. My mother's face again. The expression was gentle. It made my chest ache with a longing that felt weaponized. The face's mouth moved slowly, shaping something like speech. No sound came out, but I understood the intent. Come closer. I took a step back instead. The tall thing tilted its head, and the faces shifted. My own face surfaced, young again, eyes wide, terrified. It mirrored me. Then the forest around us changed. The fog thinned suddenly, not clearing but rearranging, forming a corridor between the trees. The headlamp beam reached farther. I could see ahead now, a path that looked like the gravel road I had driven in on. It was impossible. I had run blindly for minutes, maybe longer. I should have been deep in the forest. Yet there it was, a road. Hope surged up, hot and dangerous. The tall thing stood aside slightly, as if granting permission. The whispering returned, soft now, almost encouraging. I stared at the road, then at the tall thing, then back at the road. The easiest escape I could imagine had just been placed in front of me. Too easy. I forced myself to look closer. The road surface looked wrong under the headlamp. Not gravel. Not dirt. It shimmered faintly, as if made of wet skin. The edges of the road were lined with stones that looked like teeth. And farther down, where the road curved out of sight, I saw faces hovering in a line, like lanterns, guiding the way. A trap. The tall thing's faces rolled into a grin. I turned away from the offered road and ran in the opposite direction, choosing uncertainty over a path that wanted me. The whispering snapped into anger again. The fog surged behind me like a wave. I heard the soft sliding pursuit of faces, faster now, less patient. The headlamp beam bounced wildly. Trees blurred. My breath tore my throat. Then I saw it. A faint orange glow ahead, low and flickering. Fire. Not my campfire. This was deeper in the forest, hidden among trunks. I crashed through brush and entered a smaller clearing. In the center sat a stone fire ring, older than the one at the campground, with blackened rocks that looked used for years. A small fire burned there, steady, as if someone had tended it recently. Beside the ring was a log bench and a crude wooden post with a carved symbol I did not recognize. The carving was not decorative. It looked like a warning. The air here felt different. Warmer. Less heavy. I stumbled toward the fire, hands out, and the heat hit my face like relief. I crouched close, greedily soaking it in. Behind me, the whispering stopped at the edge of this clearing, like it had hit an invisible wall. I turned slowly. At the tree line, faces hovered, but they did not cross into the clearing. They drifted back and forth, agitated. The fog tried to creep in, but it thinned as it approached the fire, dissolving. And at the far edge, the tall thing stood, half hidden among trees, watching. It did not step forward. It could not. For the first time, I felt a boundary that was not mine but older, like the forest itself had drawn a line. I looked around the small clearing, searching for whoever had built this fire. Someone was here. Or had been. My headlamp beam caught something on the log bench. A bundle wrapped in oilcloth. I approached cautiously and unwrapped it with shaking fingers. Inside was a small notebook, swollen from damp but readable, and a box of wooden matches sealed in wax. The notebook's first page was covered in tight handwriting. No quotation marks. No friendly greetings. Just a sentence that made my blood turn cold. Do not let it learn your face. I read the sentence again to make sure my eyes were not inventing it. Do not let it learn your face. My mouth felt dry enough to crack. I swallowed and tasted smoke from the small fire. The matches in the wax-sealed box felt like someone had placed them there for me specifically, as if the forest had a habit of preparing for desperate visitors. The faces at the edge of the clearing bobbed and drifted, frustrated. They stayed outside the invisible boundary, their whispering reduced to a low, irritated hiss. The tall thing did not move. I opened the notebook carefully, turning pages that stuck slightly. The handwriting continued, dense and urgent, like the writer had been trying to compress a lifetime of terror into a few sheets before the night ran out. The words came in fragments, but the meaning was clear. There was something in this forest that collected faces. Not physically, not like masks you could hold. It collected the way a mirror collects images, except it kept them, used them, wore them. The writer called it the borrower. I glanced up at the tall shape when I read that name. It seemed to shift, as if it recognized the attention. The notebook warned that the borrower could not create faces from nothing. It needed a pattern. It needed time watching you to learn the angles, the small asymmetries, the way your fear moved muscles. Once it learned you, it could use your face to lure you, to weaken you, to make you hesitate, to make you trust. The writer said the faces were not separate creatures. They were pieces of the borrower, thrown out like feelers. They tasted heat and memory. They brought back what they learned. I thought of the face on the car window becoming mine. I felt sick. Another passage described the sanctuary clearing I stood in. The writer called it a bound fire. Not just a campfire, but a fire lit with intention and marked with the carved symbol on the post. A line of old rules, older than Park Service boundaries. The borrower could not cross a bound fire unless it was invited. The notebook underlined one line so hard the paper tore slightly. Never invite it. My breath came out slow. The obvious question arrived next, heavy as a stone. How do you leave? I flipped pages faster, my fingers clumsy. The answer was not comforting. The borrower did not hunt everyone. It hunted people who were alone. People who were lost. People who would panic quietly. And it did not always kill. Sometimes it took something else. The notebook described survivors found wandering the forest road days later, alive but wrong. Faces slack. Eyes empty. Unable to remember their names. Unable to recognize family. Like their identity had been rubbed smooth. Faceless, the writer called them, even though their physical faces remained. I understood then that the borrower was not just stealing appearance. It was stealing the sense of self behind it. The notebook's later pages contained rough instructions. Stay near the bound fire until dawn if you can find one. Do not let fog touch your skin for long. Do not follow roads that appear too easily. Do not trust voices that sound like loved ones. And, most importantly, do not let it see you clearly. The writer recommended covering reflective surfaces, turning off phone screens, avoiding direct eye contact with the faces when possible, and if pursued, smearing ash on your skin to blur heat and scent. I looked down at my hands. They were pale in the headlamp beam. Too visible. I reached into the fire ring and pinched a bit of ash, rubbing it into my palms and across my cheeks. It left smudges, darkening my skin, making me look like someone who had crawled out of a chimney. It felt ridiculous until I noticed the faces at the clearing edge drifted slightly farther back, as if my blurred features annoyed them. Good. I read on. There was a map sketched near the back, crude but purposeful. The writer had drawn the abandoned campground clearing, the gravel road, the ravine, the creek, and this bound fire clearing marked as safe. A line led from the bound fire to a place labeled Stone Mouth. The writer wrote that the forest had an exit that was not a road. Stone Mouth was described as a narrow canyon opening with a flat rock overhang shaped like lips. Beneath it was a tunnel that ran under a ridge and came out near a county road. An old smuggler's route, maybe, or a natural passage. The writer did not know its origin. The writer only knew it worked. But Stone Mouth required something. A toll. Not money. Not blood, the notebook stressed. The borrower loved blood because it meant panic, but blood was not the currency here. The toll was secrecy. You had to leave something behind that the borrower could not follow. Your name. The notebook said you could not speak your full name after stepping past a certain marker near Stone Mouth, or the borrower would latch onto it like a hook. Names were anchors. The borrower could pull on them. I stared at that line for a long time, my mind resisting. It sounded like superstition. Yet everything else in this night had sounded impossible until it happened. A sudden rustle came from behind the carved post. I whipped my headlamp beam around. A figure stood at the edge of the firelight, just inside the sanctuary boundary. A person. For a second, relief nearly buckled my knees. My brain reached for ordinary explanations. Another camper. A ranger. Someone who could jump a car, who could talk, who could make this nightmare shareable. Then the figure stepped forward, and the firelight revealed a face I recognized. It was me. Not exactly. It had my general shape, my jacket, my hair. But the proportions were slightly wrong, like a mannequin dressed in my clothing. The eyes were empty smudges. The mouth did not quite know how to be a mouth. It stood there, facing me, as still as a photo. The faces outside the clearing began whispering again, excited. The tall thing beyond the tree line leaned closer, watching. The copy of me raised one hand slowly, palm up, a gesture that felt like an invitation. My throat tightened. The notebook's warning screamed in my head. Never invite it. The copy's mouth moved, shaping silent words, as if it could not speak in this boundary but could still communicate intent. Come here. Come closer. Trust yourself. I stepped back from the fire unconsciously, and my boot kicked a stone. The sound snapped me into focus. The copy of me was inside the sanctuary, which meant one of two things. Either the borrower had found a way in, or the copy was not the borrower. My headlamp beam trembled as I held it on the figure. I saw details that made my skin prickle. Its skin had a texture like paper, slightly fibrous. Its jacket looked damp but did not drip. Its shadow on the ground was too thin. And around its neck, barely visible in the firelight, was a thin cord with something hanging from it. A small carved token, similar to the symbol on the post. The copy was marked. I lowered my headlamp slightly, trying to see without blasting it. The figure did not react. It simply stood, waiting. Then, from behind it, another figure stepped into the firelight. An older man. Real-looking. Weathered face. Gray beard. Eyes sharp. He held his hands open, empty, and stopped a safe distance away. His voice came out rough but clear, and it hit me like a miracle because it was normal sound, not whispering fog. You should not be alone out here. He did not smile. His gaze flicked to the tree line, where the faces hovered outside the boundary. He spoke again, quieter. It followed you here. I swallowed. My voice felt fragile. What is it? The man looked at the tall shape beyond the trees, then back at me. You already know. You saw the masks. It wants your shape, your story, your way out. I glanced at the copy of me again. It had not moved. It held that palm-up gesture like a statue. Who is that? The man's jaw tightened. That is what it makes when it has watched you enough. A lure. A practice skin. Sometimes it sends them in first because it cannot cross the line. Sometimes it sends them because you can. He stepped closer to the fire and crouched, feeding it a stick like he had done it 1,000 nights. The sanctuary boundary held. He looked up at me through the firelight. Do not speak your name in the woods. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until you are out. My heart hammered. The notebook's warning matched his words too perfectly. You wrote this. I held up the notebook. The man's eyes flicked to it. Something like grief crossed his face. Not me. Someone before me. I found it. I keep it here for the next person. It is how we do not lose all of you. All of you. The phrase chilled me. How many have come here? He did not answer directly. Enough that the forest remembers. Outside the boundary, the whispering surged. The faces swirled, restless, like they were testing the line for weakness. The man stood abruptly and pointed into the trees beyond the bound fire, in the direction opposite the false road the borrower had offered earlier. Stone Mouth is still open. If you can walk and if you can keep silent about who you are, you can leave. He looked at the copy of me. But it will try to walk with you. The copy's mouth widened slightly, like it was trying to smile. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a pouch. He tossed it to me. Ash and salt. Rub it on your face. Under your eyes. It blurs you to it. It does not like salt. It remembers the sea. I caught the pouch. My hand shook so hard the drawstring rattled. The man stepped closer and grabbed my shoulder with a grip that felt solid and human. Listen. The worst mistake is thinking you can outrun it. You cannot. You can only make it lose interest long enough. You can only confuse it. You can only deny it what it wants. He leaned in, voice low. It wants a clean copy of you. Do not give it one. Do not let it study you. Do not stare into the faces. They are eyes for it. He released my shoulder and nodded toward the copy. And do not follow yourself. The copy of me took a slow step forward, still inside the sanctuary, still not crossing any line I could see. Its palm-up hand lowered slightly, as if disappointed. The man grabbed a burning stick from the bound fire and held it out to me like a torch. Take the fire with you. A bound fire cannot travel far, but you can carry its fear. I took the burning stick. The heat was immediate, comforting, painful. The faces at the tree line hissed in the whispering way, angry again. The tall thing shifted, its cluster of faces rolling like a storm front. The man pointed into the darkness. Go now, before it learns this place. I tightened my grip on the torch stick, clutched the notebook and the waxed matches, and stepped toward the tree line. The sanctuary's warmth faded after only a few steps. Fog licked at my ankles, cold and eager. I smeared ash and salt under my eyes and across my cheeks, making a dark mask. Behind me, the bound fire crackled steadily. The man watched, tense, ready to pull me back if the line broke. The copy of me turned its head, tracking my movement. And then it did something that almost stopped my heart. It whispered. Not the borrower's chorus. Not the forest wind. A single voice, soft, close to my own. It said my name. I felt it like a hook in my chest, tugging. The man shouted, loud, furious, cutting through the night. Do not answer it. I clamped my teeth together hard enough my jaw ached. I forced my gaze forward and stepped into the trees, torch held high. Behind me, the faces surged in excitement, and the tall thing leaned, as if it had found a new thread to pull. I did not look back. The torch's flame fought the fog like a small, stubborn animal. Every step away from the bound fire made the air colder. The trees closed in. The headlamp beam and the torch created two overlapping cones of light, one white and one orange, and I stayed inside that overlap like it was a shelter. The whispering followed at the edge of hearing. Not close enough to become a roar. Not far enough to ignore. I held the notebook tight against my chest, more for comfort than information. My brain kept replaying the copy's whisper, my name in my own voice. The hook sensation in my chest lingered like a bruise. Do not answer it. I did not know how much power there was in silence, but I clung to it. The woodsman had pointed me toward Stone Mouth, and I followed the crude map's logic in my head. Keep the creek to my right. Avoid the false road. Follow the ridge line until the trees thin and the ground turns rocky. Fog thickened in pockets, swirling around trunks, and whenever it brushed too close I thrust the torch out, watching it recoil slightly as if heat annoyed it. The faces hovered beyond the torch's reach, pale ovals flickering in and out between branches. I avoided looking directly at them. I looked at ground, at roots, at the path, at anything except the smooth suggestion of eyes. The forest tried to confuse me anyway. Shapes in the fog resembled familiar things. A mailbox, a street sign, a porch light. Small slices of normal life floating impossibly between pines. My mind reached for them like a drowning person reaches for driftwood. I refused. I kept walking. After what felt like an hour, the torch shortened, flames licking closer to my hand. Heat became pain. I adjusted my grip and held it lower, letting it burn down. The whispering grew closer. I heard footfalls behind me. Soft, careful. Not the sliding drift of faces. A person. My spine went rigid. The woodsman had warned me it would try to walk with me. I did not turn. The footfalls matched my pace. Always a few steps behind. I stared straight ahead, forcing my breathing to stay even. The footfalls stopped when I stopped. Started when I started. Patient. The torch sputtered. I could feel the boundary of heat shrinking. A soft sound came from behind me. My voice again, shaped into something almost pleading. You are lost. Let me help. It felt like my tongue wanted to answer automatically, the way it answers when someone says your name. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood, using pain as an anchor. I kept walking. The voice shifted subtly, becoming someone else. My mother again, warm and worried. Honey, come back. You are freezing. My eyes burned with sudden tears, not because I believed it, but because my body remembered her tone. The borrower was not just copying faces. It was copying emotional shortcuts. I clenched my fists, nails biting into ash-smeared palms. I walked faster. The footfalls behind me kept pace. The torch finally died, leaving only a glowing ember at the end. Darkness pressed in immediately, and the headlamp beam felt weak without the fire's warmth. The whispering surged in excitement. Faces drifted closer. I fumbled for the waxed matches. My fingers shook. I forced myself to open the box carefully, not dropping them in wet leaves. I needed another flame. I spotted a dead branch snapped low on a tree, dry enough to catch. I pulled it free, splintering wood, and scraped a match to life. The flame flared small and bright. I held it to the branch. It caught, not quickly, but enough to build. A new torch. As the flame grew, the nearby faces recoiled slightly again. Relief loosened my chest for the first time since leaving the sanctuary. The footfalls behind me stopped. Then I heard something else. A faint scratching sound, like nails on bark. I dared a quick glance sideways, not fully back, just enough. Between two trunks, something pale moved low along the ground. Not a face. A body. Thin, crawling, made of fog and bone suggestion. Its head was a face, but the face was stretched, elongated, mouth too wide. It was not trying to lure me. It was trying to herd me. Ahead, the trees began to thin. The ground rose, turning rocky. The fog pulled back slightly, as if reluctant to climb. A dark shape emerged in the headlamp beam. Stone. A rock overhang shaped like a pair of lips, exactly as the notebook described. Beneath it, a narrow opening yawned like a throat. Stone mouth. My heart hammered with desperate hope. I approached cautiously. The air here was colder, but cleaner, less damp. The ground was littered with small stones that clicked under my boots. On a boulder near the opening, someone had carved the same symbol as the sanctuary post. A boundary marker. The notebook had warned me about names here. I pressed my lips together, refusing even to think my full name too loudly in my head. I did not know if thoughts counted, but I treated them like sparks near gasoline. Behind me, the whispering intensified. The faces gathered at the edge of this rocky clearing, hovering between trees, reluctant to step onto the bare stone. The tall thing appeared among them, partially solid now, its limbs clearer against the darkness. Its cluster of faces rolled like a cyclone. And directly behind me, just out of my headlamp beam, I felt the presence of the copy. It did not breathe. It did not rustle leaves. It simply existed. My new torch crackled in my hand. I held it high and stepped closer to Stone Mouth. The opening was low. I would have to crouch, maybe crawl. The tunnel beyond was black. I hesitated. The whispering behind me ceased. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. A soft touch brushed my shoulder. Ice-cold absence again, crawling into skin. My body jerked. I nearly dropped the torch. I stepped forward fast, toward the tunnel. The copy's voice whispered right beside my ear. "Say it. Say your name so I know it is you." I clenched my teeth. My jaw trembled. My chest felt tight with that hook-pull sensation again. The tall thing leaned closer from the tree line. Its faces rearranged into mine, dozens of versions at once, all watching. The forest seemed to wait, like a courtroom holding breath for a verdict. I dropped to a crouch and shoved myself into the stone mouth opening, torch first. Cold stone scraped my shoulders. The tunnel smelled like mineral damp and old earth. My headlamp beam hit rough walls inches from my face. Behind me, I heard movement. The copy shifting closer, trying to follow. The notebook had said it would try to walk with you. I twisted slightly and thrust the torch backward, flame licking the tunnel entrance. A pale shape recoiled, hissing. The copy could not tolerate the heat in this confined space. Good. I crawled deeper, shoulders scraping. The tunnel narrowed, forcing me to wriggle like an animal. The torch flame struggled for oxygen but stayed alive. Then the whispering began again, not behind me now, but above. The stone vibrated faintly, like a low hum. Dust sifted from the ceiling. The borrower could not enter, but it could still reach. A face appeared in the stone wall beside me, emerging slowly like a bubble in mud. Pale features pushing outward, eyes forming last. It was my face, older again, mouth stretching into a smile. My headlamp beam hit it, and it held its shape, stubborn. I turned my head away instantly, focusing on the tunnel ahead. Do not let it study you. Do not stare into faces. The face's mouth moved. No sound, just silent insistence. I crawled faster, torch held forward. The flame flickered, smoked, recovered. Another face bulged from the stone ahead. Then another. The tunnel walls began to sprout them like fungus, each one a variation of me. I kept my eyes on the ground, on the narrow strip of stone between my hands. I crawled by feel, refusing to give them my gaze. The tunnel sloped downward, then up. My knees ached. My palms scraped raw. Behind me, the tunnel entrance filled with a pale glow as faces pressed close from the outside, watching the hole like a hive watching its last escaping bee. The copy's voice whispered again, more desperate now, as if time was running out. Say it so I can follow. Say it so I can bring you back. I did not answer. I crawled until my arms burned. Then I saw it. A faint gray light ahead, not from my headlamp. Natural light. The tunnel exit. I surged forward, scrambling the last few feet, and burst out onto cold gravel, gasping air that tasted different. Less pine. More open sky. I rolled onto my back, torch still in hand, and looked up. The clouds were thinner here. Stars prickled through. Behind me, the tunnel mouth was a dark slit in the hillside. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, from inside the tunnel, I heard a sound that made my skin crawl. A long exhale, like a disappointed sigh. A face formed at the tunnel mouth, just at the edge, pale and watching. It did not cross. It could not. The face held, then slowly receded into darkness. The whispering faded like a radio losing signal. I lay there trembling, ash-smeared, filthy, alive. And then, very far away down the county road, I saw headlights. Real ones. Moving. I did not trust the headlights at first. After everything the forest had done, any light felt suspicious. But these headlights moved with the steady bounce of a vehicle on a real road. They did not glide. They did not appear too conveniently close. They came from far away and took time to reach me. Time mattered. Reality takes time. I forced myself up, legs wobbling. My torch was nearly dead again, and I let it fall onto gravel where it hissed and smoked. The headlamp remained, but its beam looked pathetic against the approaching car lights. I stepped into the road and raised both arms. The vehicle slowed. An older pickup, dusty, with a light bar on the roof. It rolled to a stop a few yards away. The driver window cranked down. A woman leaned out. Middle-aged, tired eyes, hair tucked under a beanie. Her gaze flicked over me fast, taking in the ash smears, the torn clothes, the blood on my cheek from biting it earlier, the wild headlamp beam. She did not ask if I was okay. She asked a different question, the kind people ask when they already know the answer might be dangerous. Did you come out of the mouth? I nodded, too shocked to speak. Her shoulders loosened slightly, as if she had seen a sign she trusted. Get in. And do not tell me your name. The words hit me like another stab of cold. I stumbled toward the passenger side and yanked the door open. Warm air rushed out, smelling like coffee and old upholstery. I climbed in and slammed the door like I was sealing a coffin against the night. The woman put the truck in drive immediately and rolled forward, headlights sweeping across the hillside where the stone mouth exit hid in shadow. In the rear-view mirror, I saw nothing. No faces. No fog pouring out. Just darkness, quiet and contained. We drove in silence for several minutes. The road curved through sparse trees, then opened onto a wider stretch where the forest fell back. The fog thinned. My breathing eased, though my muscles still shook. The woman glanced at me once. You have ash on your face. Good. Keep it until sunrise. I swallowed, voice finally working. What is that thing? Her jaw tightened. People give it different names. Borrower is the one I hear most. It is older than the park. Older than the county. Some say it was here before the first road. She kept her eyes on the road. It does not like crowds. It does not like daylight. It likes people who think they are just camping. I stared out the window, watching trees slide by. Normal trees. No faces. No wrong shadows. My brain kept waiting for the trick. For the road to become wet skin again. For stones to become teeth. But the truck's tires hummed the steady sound of rubber on asphalt. The woman's hands moved on the wheel in small human corrections. Normal. My throat tightened, and I realized how close I had come to losing my mind to that other kind of silence. Why did you ask about the mouth? She sighed, a sound worn down by repetition. Because people stumble out of it sometimes. And because if you did not, I would not stop. Not alone at night. Not on this road. Her eyes flicked to me again, harder now. You did not answer it when it called you, did you? I hesitated. The hook sensation in my chest flared faintly at the memory. No. Her shoulders loosened again. Good. That means it did not get a clean hold. I stared at my hands, still smudged with ash. My nails had dirt under them. They looked like hands that belonged to someone else. What happens if it learns you? She did not answer immediately. The truck passed a reflective road sign, and for a split second I saw my own face in the passenger window. My expression was hollow and shocked. Then the reflection shifted, just slightly, and I thought I saw the smooth, undecided features of one of the forest faces overlaying mine. I jerked my gaze away. The woman's voice came softly, as if she had seen me flinch. It follows what you give it. Face, name, memory, fear. You feed it, and it feeds back on you until you do not know which parts are yours. I swallowed hard. Can it follow me now? She shook her head once. Not across boundaries like that. Not easily. But it can leave splinters. Dreams. Moments where you catch your reflection and it feels wrong. That is why you do not talk about it the wrong way. That is why you do not say its invitations out loud. I pressed my lips together. We drove until the sky began to lighten at the edges. Not sunrise yet, but the first gray suggestion that night was losing its grip. The woman turned onto a side road and pulled into a small lot near a closed ranger outpost. The building was dark. A flag hung limp. A sign read something about seasonal hours, but I did not focus on it. She shut off the engine. Silence fell, but it was not the forest silence. It was the ordinary silence of a parked vehicle. She reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a paper cup with a lid, still warm. Drink. Do not spill it on yourself. I took it with shaking hands. Coffee. Bitter. Real. She watched me drink like she was checking a vital sign. When the sun is up, you go into town. You get a hotel. You sleep. If you dream of faces, you do not follow them. If you wake and your reflection looks wrong, you look away and wash your face with cold water and salt. She tapped the ash on my cheek with one finger, gentle but firm. And you keep this until sunrise fully breaks. I nodded, too tired to argue. My phone buzzed suddenly. 1 bar of service returned, then 2. A flood of missed notifications. All meaningless compared to the fact that the device now believed I existed in a network again. The woman opened her door and stepped out into the thinning dark. I followed, legs stiff. The air smelled like wet pavement and distant fields, not pine and iron. The horizon brightened. Gray turned to pale blue. I looked back toward the direction of the forest. From here, it was just a black line of trees against the sky. No fog spilling out. No faces floating. Just a forest that could hide anything. The woman stood beside me, hands in her pockets, watching the same line. You will want to tell people. I know. But be careful. The borrower likes stories. It rides them. It uses them to find new listeners. I glanced at her, confused. My channel. She looked at me sharply. You were filming, were you not? The chill returned. Not from weather. Yes. Her expression hardened. Do not post the footage. Not raw. Not with your face clear. Not with your voice saying your name. You think you want proof, but proof is also a path. I thought of the camera blinking red in the clearing. The faces turning into mine. The copy whispering my name. My stomach clenched. What if I already recorded it saying my name? The woman stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once, as if deciding. Then you do not watch it alone. And you do not play it at night. And you do not let it loop. She stepped closer. If you edit it, blur your face. Distort your voice. Remove the moment it says your name. If you cannot remove it, bury the file. Destroy the drive. Some things are not worth content. The sun's first edge broke over the horizon, spilling thin gold across the lot. Light touched the ranger outpost sign, the truck hood, the woman's beanie. The moment sunlight hit my ash-smeared hands, the hook sensation in my chest eased, like a knot loosening. I took a long breath. For the first time, my breath did not fog the air. The woman watched me, then nodded toward the road. Go. And remember the one rule that matters most. She paused, eyes narrowing as if choosing words that would not become an invitation. Do not let it learn you. I nodded. And as I walked toward the main road where town waited, I caught my reflection in the truck's side mirror. For a heartbeat, it looked normal. Then, very faintly, just at the edge of the glass, a pale oval appeared behind my shoulder, like a face watching from far away. I turned. Nothing there. When I looked back, the mirror showed only my own exhausted eyes. But I did not smile. I did not give the forest anything it could copy. If you made it to the end, tell me one thing in the comments. Would you have stayed by the fire, or would you have run into the trees? Because after that night, I learned something I can't unlearn. Some places do not want you to leave the same way you arrived. Some things do not want your body. They want your identity. And if you ever find yourself camping and the fog starts to look like faces at the edge of the firelight, do not stare. Do not answer. And whatever you do, do not let it learn you. If you enjoyed this story, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing for more true-style supernatural horror. New uploads are coming, and the next one is worse. Good night. And keep your name to yourself.